Hey guys, this is Shan with EVGA Direct, and today we have a special look at another component from our EVGA 19th anniversary build. This is a Coffee Lake based Z370 Classified K. This is a motherboard designed for not only overclocking like Classified series is known for, but also some cool RGB components, and also really cool component placement and a lot of things. One of them being, like we've seen right angle connectors for a while from EVGA. The fact that they didn't do it on all of them is kind of nice, because in some cases, like your 24 pin being right angled, is not always ideal because it may overlap the cable pocket and not allow it to cable manage correctly. So I'm glad they did a standard connector here, because it's not really needed to get out of the way of anything. Now they did do a right angle 6 pin down here. That allows supplemental bus power or slot power to your graphics cards versus stressing the 24 pin to feed power all the way down to some hungry graphics cards if you decide to go with a two-way SLI setup. On top of that, they also located right here, kind of strategically, dual 4-pin or 50/50 compatible RGB strip connectors, so that you can control all your RGB devices from a central location versus where some have one here or one here, maybe one down in an obscure spot in the bottom of the board, where it might be harder to hide those cables away. Now, being that we're using the DG77 case means we can run one of these right up to the RGB controller and control everything natively through a very easy and cohesive and nicely cable managed setup. So this is the next step in the evolution of the anniversary edition build we're doing. So this thing's going to be housing an 8086K with its 13-phase PWM, means that our VRM, I should say. We can actually push that processor quite a bit and see how far we can take it. So that's really exciting to see what limits we can push it to with this board to build a really, truly awesome system coming from EVGA Direct. Now, beyond that, we also have metal PCIe slots and metal reinforced DIMM slots. That ensures that you don't potentially break slots off of the board. Like, for instance, we ship systems, and when we ship them, in certain occasions, GPUs can be not necessarily supported very well in a standard plastic slot, and even though we pack them the best we can, there's no accounting for how, sometimes shippers will treat your system. So having that extra durability by having a safe slot there, having that metal reinforced PCIe slot, means you're less likely to get potential damage if your system's treated roughly. Now, with that being said, there are some aesthetic pieces beyond, obviously, you have your standard EVGA look, but they built a whole shield over the top of the already existing black housing for your I/O. They built a shield to go straight across to cover your VRM coolers, which are here. These cover all your MOSFETs and all your power components. And I'm a little on the fence with this, because potentially you could trap or keep air from cooling these critical components, especially if you're running an AIO liquid cooler and you're in a case that is less than optimal for airflow. Luckily for this build and all EVGA Direct builds, we make sure that you have proper airflow to cool your system adequately, or at least work with you to work with the best solution. Because with this kind of setup, if you had maybe a super silent system that didn't have a lot of airflow, your VRM could potentially get pretty warm in this kind of case. Just by looking at the shielding you have here, there's a potential for it to get pretty warm. But overall, aesthetically, it creates a neat offset with all the black components on the board. So I would say that's a pretty fair pass for them. It also has dual M2 slots, which they actually include in the box. Dual M2 thermal pads that apparently will cool the M2 directly to your PCB, or the printed circuit board on your motherboard itself. So that's a unique way of doing it versus having a metal cooler on top. Then you also have this one here. This is a Key E M2 socket, which is designed for Wi-Fi cards, which is why the included I/O shield actually will have cutouts. Let's go ahead and take a look at this. Open. We'll actually have two cutouts right above your clear CMOS switch, which are for Wi-Fi antennas. So if you decide to install Wi-Fi on this thing, it's fully supported. Just pop out the little breakout brackets. It also has Type-C, USB 3.1 to make sure you have all the modern connectivity. It comes with two whole SATA cables for the 6 ports on the board. So being the fact that a lot of people go on M2 now and maybe one storage drive, that's not really unrealistic, because most people aren't populating all the slots. But let's say you are populating like 6 drives on your system based on this board, you'll definitely have to pick up a few extra SATA cables. And one thing, unfortunately, I didn't see a high bandwidth bridge in here. Instead, it's just standard two-way SLI bridge. So EVGA does offer custom high bandwidth EVGA branded SLI bridges, but where we've seen in some of the ROG boards and some of the Gigabyte boards where they have one by default that's a hard two-way bridge, this one doesn't include one. So if you decide to run SLI, which is starting to kind of go away, not as many people are building dual card systems because of platform adoption and whatnot. If you want to run the high bandwidth bridge, you will have to actually pick up that separately. Other than that, basically this board has for networking a killer E2500, killer networks. So that's give or take. You know, some people really like killer, some people prefer Intel. This one does have killer networks, and it looks like the secondary, actually let's take a look here. Let's see if we can see what the secondary chipset is. Okay, there's your creative for audio. Okay, you have your A's Media bridge chip. We're going to find this, I tell you. We will find it. Looks like it might actually have dual killer networks. See, now we got to go to the box because that's where we've got to go. Okay. So onboard Ethernet. Yep, 2 E2500 killer networks. So where some of them will run one killer gaming network, they ran 2 on this board. Now, obviously, killer networks has some advanced features like traffic monitoring, traffic shaping, things like that via their software. So that's one of those things you either like or don't like. But at the end of the day, I haven't seen any major issues with killer networks, especially on their current gen chipsets or some of the more newer ones. Ideally, a lot of people like to split it, like one Intel, one killer. This one has both killer. So that's one thing to be aware of, depending if you have a strong allegiance to Intel chipsets. It's something you're going to want to look at. But other than that, this thing has excellent component placement. It has a switch right here for a physical switch, actually, which I really like versus a jumper because you lose jumper caps super easily. A physical switch for switching between your 2 physical BIOS chips. So that makes life a lot better if you're trying to diagnose problems or pushing some overclocks and maybe get some instability, corrupt a BIOS. You can just flip it and continue to carry on. Other than that, I would say EVGA built a really awesome board here, and I'm looking forward to putting this thing together in the Anniversary Edition system. And we're going to build a custom configuration based around this board and the other components you saw with our anniversary build, so that if you don't win the one through EVGA, you can still get it from us with a very similar design styling to build you basically a badass system based on some really high-end hardware. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to see other content from us, be sure to like or subscribe to all of our social media channels, including YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, so that we can bring you even more content and you can stay up to date on exactly what we're talking about, all of our tech news, live streams, and all the above. And please share with us anything you'd like to see in the future.